Hello, Soul Spiralers. Welcome back to today's episode. Today, I have Nick Moss joining me. He is an experienced health practitioner helping many people across a wide variety of health challenges, ranging from chronic pain, chronic illness, autoimmune issues, trauma, anxiety, digestive, metabolic disorders, posture, and injury rehabilitation. But he's very focused on really bringing the nervous system back to its equilibrium point so that the body can heal and the body can feel well. He's also a mentor and a teacher, a facilitator, and he actually was my teacher when I was studying kinesiology. So he's got that under his tool belt as well. So I'm very excited to have Nick join me and see where the conversation goes today. Thanks for coming on, Nick.
Thanks, Kristin. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm very excited. Oh, well, I personally have seen you for sessions recently, and you taught me a few years back when I was studying, and I know things have shifted quite a bit for you even during that time. You definitely, I see you as someone that's evolving and growing and always keeping themselves on top of learning new things so that you can put new stuff out to your clients and your students, or the practitioners that you're mentoring. What do you feel like is the main theme that you're seeing in terms of what most people are coming to see you for at the moment?
Yeah, look, as you mentioned, I do work with a lot of different things, but really what everyone is sort of presenting with is really chronic stress, because stress by itself is not a bad thing at all. In fact, stress is extremely important and something that we need to use and leverage to improve our ability to withstand the stresses of life. But when people don't learn how to discharge and unload accumulated stressors, whether that be physical, chemical, emotional, stuff that we accumulate every day, if we don't learn how to unload that, over time it just builds and creates a really wound up nervous system. So it's like a nervous system that's filled with all these little kind of micro threats. Some of them are physical related, some of them are digestive related, because we have to remember that the nervous system is its main role is to send and receive, send signals to the brain, and for the brain to interpret that and then to create an output off that. That's pretty much what it's doing all the time, whether you're conscious of it or not. And 95% of it is unconscious. So most people have sort of we haven't really been taught as a society how to do this. I mean, there's a lot more awareness that's coming out now with breath work and things like that. Yoga, meditation, all that sort of stuff, which is really cool. But I think people forget how much stress we're actually exposed to on a daily basis, toxins, things like that. And just being on red line the whole time, we just really, we're not actually designed for that. The human body is not designed for that, and to be cut off from nature. Yeah. So because of that, we have to learn how to work in rather than just always working out, putting an output. We have to work in. And usually what happens when people come and see me is that things have just become too much, and they may have a normal sort of diagnosis, which I hate that word, but a label, right? So chronic pain, or fibromyalgia, or endometriosis, or something like that. And still underlying all those things is really, when you really boil it down, is systemic inflammation and chronic stress. And those two things, they affect each other. So rather than looking at someone's diagnosis, it's a sort of a good starting point. If we really peel things back and we work out where these threats have been accumulated and when they sort of started, and we can use tools such as kinesiology to essentially dialogue with the nervous system to ask it what's there, and first of all, what when we find something, are we allowed are we allowed, is that nervous system allowing us to clear that?
Yeah.
Because if we push someone too quickly, we try and heal too quickly, they can create a reverse effect. So generally people are coming in with all sorts of different things. Pain, it's pretty much, pain or anxiety are the two main things.
Yeah.
And underlying them is, chronic stress, usually caused by not fully moving through our traumas, whether they're big events or whether they're accumulated small events over time.
Yeah, totally. It makes me think of when I came to see you recently, right after my dad had passed away, and that I was still holding I could feel in my body like a real sense of feeling trauma from the experience of when I found out, because it was through the police. And yeah, there was so much charge there, I guess. And so I remember you were talking about a couple things, but one of the things you were talking about was the vibration or the shaking.
Yeah.
When you're going through a trauma.
Yeah.
And that being like a natural thing that your body needs to experience.
Yes.
But most of us shut down to that, like don't let ourselves experience it. Does it happen naturally if we like fully let it?
Yeah, it does. It's built into all mammals and I think all vertebrates.
Yeah.
And it's basically a shaking mechanism, which is technically termed a neurogenic tremor, right?
Tremor, yeah.
Neurogenic tremor. And there's a system called TRE, trauma release exercise, which a physiotherapist worked out how to put your body into a position to consciously initiate and turn it off. But it can very much happen spontaneously because it is built into the architecture of the nervous system. So it can happen spontaneously, and but what happens is, as a society, we've been conditioned that that's weird, and also that it's like a negative or a medical pathology. Whereas there is pathological tremors, like there is, seizures, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a big difference though, and a lot of the times, what happens is with these tremors is they can be released sporadically during a trauma. But oftentimes they may be accompanied with what are perceived as negative feelings. And we tend to jump out from those feelings because we perceive those feelings as negative, or we may be like embarrassed about like what's happening to our body. But if we just were able to kind of soften into it and just let it happen naturally, it is the therapy in and of itself. It is the therapy, everything is vibration, if you look into quantum physics, quantum mechanics and stuff like that. And I'll give you a real example that I actually happened to me with that. And because I was sort of studying this stuff. So I was conceptualizing it in my head, and also I'd already had some experiences with this in my clinic. Not like they sort of just happened spontaneously. This is about 4 and a bit years ago, just before the birth of my daughter. So my partner's about like 8 months pregnant, and we had an awesome cat, like who was probably about his rescue cat. It's 2 years old, and he decided to just basically almost like he just had this weird, bizarre accident and died very quickly, right in front of me, and like it just was like, really shocking, and because of the way it happened, and it was just all quick, and it was just like a normal day, and then all of a sudden that happened, and I remember I learned this. So I'd read the story in the book where the guy who wrote the book said he, again, had an accident and he allowed himself to tremor and he got no PTSD. And so what I did is when I realized that my cat had died, I was actually starting to lose it. My partner, who's a vet nurse, she was holding it together, being in vet nurse mode. I knew she was going to lose it soon. So I basically lay down on the bed and just literally like let this shaking happen. And yeah, Brooke said it was like I was, just like running, like writhing around like a weirdo. But I just sort of went with it and felt into it. And then when I felt there was sort of nothing happening, then I got up and I had like zero kind of body trauma in that moment. And I was able to go over to the cat and say, thanks, buddy. Thanks for your time. Thanks, and just sort of accept it. And then at that time, my partner, she had started to realize what had happened. And 8 months pregnant, so I had to hold space. So that put me in a better position to hold space, because I wasn't 5 minutes earlier. I was crying, But it was, and I saw that and I was like, oh, wow, that's awesome. So I've just continually tried to learn a bit more about that. And even myself, I will often do the trauma release exercise most nights before bed. And if I do it, I just kind of, my system will just sort of pick up stuff from the day and just release it. I don't really care what it is or what it's about.
Yeah.
And if I do it, it's like, you wake up and, when you wake up in the morning and you might not have even had the longest sleep, but you feel rested, like your body feels rested. Like you're like, that's asleep.
Yeah.
Right? When I do that, coupled with maybe some breath work, it's amazing. It's so, and knowing what I know with the research that's out there around chronic stress and when it becomes chronic and what it leads to, it's imperative for us to have some sort of mechanism. And often we can have a few things that we do that are really helpful for just bringing that nervous system back to baseline.
Yeah, definitely. And like, it makes me think of how there's so many little things in the day. It doesn't have to be these big shocks, like a father dying or your beautiful cat dying. Is like, there's all these other little things that impact us. And as soon as we feel that reaction response in our body, there's a level of reaction happening, which could then hold some kind of challenge energetically around that charge, I guess. So yeah, I like the reminder of letting it out of your system so that you can have a well-rested sleep, because so many people struggle with sleep as well.
Yeah,
It's
huge. We forget we have to, because of the amount of stressors that we're under, we forget we actually have to almost prepare ourselves. We have to prepare ourselves to sleep. We have to do certain things, and it can't, because slightly different for each person. We have to have a practice to set ourselves up for sleep. We can't just go from watching Netflix to sleep. It doesn't work like that. Like, try it. It doesn't work. I've done it. We've all done it. Yeah. Like,
or if it does, you don't have a good sleep.
No, you might be dreaming about what you've just been watching, and something violent or whatever, that goes into your subconscious again. But yeah, like, so was that a big lesson for you? Was that a sort of eye opener for you in your experience, especially recently?
I definitely heard of it, and I'd definitely done lots of shaking, like through my Qigong practice I've done lots of vibrations. But yeah, it was a good reminder, because actually my embodiment coach, mentor, brought it up the same week for me as well, or the next week for me as well. So I was like, oh yeah, I kind of had heard of it and thought of it, but it was interesting to notice, like, how you were saying Brooke went into that like action mode, like first, before she allowed herself to go into the release mode. That's what I did when my dad passed as well, because I was like, I need to make sure Mum and Maxine are okay. Like, I needed to keep myself together.
Yeah.
Whereas Alex, he probably could have had the space to go do like the shaking and then been back, but he just went and thought like he was going to faint.
Yeah, which is another stress reaction. That's a normal inbuilt response to trauma as well.
Yeah.
It's like a vasovagal response.
Yeah.
And you were more in a fight flight sort of organizing everything response.
Yeah. I definitely, I was like, in the moment, I was like hearing the words and thinking, okay, all right, yeah, okay, Dad's passed. He's not here anymore. He's like a spirit now. And that's like what my brain was thinking. But then what made me get stressed was thinking about how to handle Mum and Maxine, and like with what we had to do afterwards. If it was just the death and it was just me and I didn't have to deal with anything else, I felt quite okay with that in the moment. I was like, okay, like this happens to everyone, there was that real spiritual side of my brain kind of coming out in the moment of like, this is okay. Like, it's going to be okay.
So that's pretty cool though. But that's like kind of a testament to the work you'd done up to that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You would have been like that 10 years ago, but it happened.
Yeah, I don't know. But I just also think that my intuition's very clear in those sorts of moments. So it's like telling me what I need, what is going to be the case. But then I then have to deal with it all. Like, that's happened to me once before when something was a shock, but my intuition was like, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be okay. But then I still had to go through the process to get to that point, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but with with what like causes the shock and like what like creates the disruption in our nervous system, or even like when we're in chronic stress, you mentioned the vagus. No, I think you said something else, vagus, something else, stimulant.
A vasovagal response, which is really
Vasovagal,
dorsal vagal response. So
yeah.
most people have heard about the vagus nerve these days, and
Yeah.
it's there's, we have one either side of our neck. So there's one on the left side of our neck, one on the right side of our neck, but also there is a front pathway on both sides, and there's a back pathway.
Right.
And the difference between those two pathways is quite significant in the nervous system's subconscious response to stress. So way before we're even thinking about it, or even know we're stressed, the brain stem will shunt us into, either a ventral vagal response, which is like to be alert but calm. This is that social nervous system stuff that you would have learnt with kinesiology.
Yeah.
Shunt us in that ventral vagal response, which is where we generally want to be. Or we'll go into the sympathetic fight-flight response, which is where the majority of us live. Yeah. Or it will then, in severe, which is potentially what happened with Alex, is that shunts us into the dorsal vagal, which is more linked to sort of shut down, immobilization, and freeze. Right.
Yeah.
But the choice that happens between those three pathways is done way before we're even consciously aware of what's happening. And I don't know if you've heard much of the HeartMath Institute.
Yeah, I have actually.
And
but maybe people listening haven't. So
so the HeartMath Institute is a group of scientists in the US who have been studying the heart, I think since like the early 90s. They have been studying how the electrical fields of the heart, how they impact the rest of the body. And what they've found is that the electrical field of the heart is like a lot bigger than the brain's electrical field. And it has its own nervous system, cardiac nervous system, and it extends out to about 3 feet. 3 feet. It's weird though, because the last 2 years, they've been getting us to stay 6 feet away from each other, which is bizarre. Anyway, we'll go back to that. But so it's 3 feet out, and this heart nervous system, it basically, the vagus is where the vagus nerve comes in again. So there are pathways into the vagus nerve, and the vagus nerve, if it's in the front, more calm pathway, will have a positive role on modulating, which is sort of controlling the heartbeat in a good way. Now with the heart as well, the heart actually, and this is where we all know in the spiritual sort of world, the heart it picks up a lot, right? So, but then now, we're seeing it actually is physiologically true. The heart's electromagnetic field will actually respond to environmental stimuli 5 to 6 seconds before you consciously perceive it, or before even your brain fires the signals for it.
Yeah.
It's so crazy.
Yeah, I heard that the mind was responding like 3 seconds before the stimuli, and then the heart was responding 8 seconds before. But then the reason that they put 8 seconds is they actually couldn't measure when the heart started responding, so they just made it like when they turned the machine on or whatever. Yeah.
Look, it could be. Yeah, it's we know it's definitely before, the brain, and from a what they will say as well is that basically the signal will go through the heart. They will perceive it through there. It will probably travel up those vagus pathways into the brain.
Yeah.
And then from there it goes down through the vagal pathways into the gut. And we will generally have that physiological feeling in the gut area. But what happens then is we can then it goes back up to our conscious mind, where we consciously perceive a feeling, which we then will often associate that feeling to a certain emotion, right? Anger or fear or worry,
guilt.
And then we'll often think about that. Why am I angry? Why am I afraid? So now we're consciously trying to think about something that's physiological, that we've named as something, and this is really the root of anxiety, right? But it's really just stimuli coming in from the world that's been interpreted in a certain way, and we can change that. But also, And it can change very quickly too. But also, the more our nervous system perceives threats, whether they're internal or external, the more likely when those signals come in and we perceive them, the more likely we're going to perceive them as threats, and then we're going to kind of formulate thought patterns and stories around that. That makes sense. And that's where we can get stuck in those sort of suffering loops.
Yeah.
And then you've got certain networks of the brain that are then firing more than others, such as the amygdala, and so just basically the limbic system has more activity in it than, say, the frontal lobe, and so you end up suffering a bit more than, say, the next person, because those networks, which are really the reason why they create suffering, is because they're trying to protect you from threat. Yeah, and this is where people get a different understanding of pain. And we think pain is always to do with tissue damage, and 5% of the time maybe yes, but the rest of the time it's just nervous system trying to protect you from something.
And that something might not even be like that much of a threat, just because we live in such like a stress-dominated world based off our own experiences and traumas. It could create different suffering around each of those.
100%, definitely. Yeah. And what people, in terms of pathways in like, so in the nervous system, we will have like kind of exteroception. So that's information or stimuli coming in from the outside, or on our tissues on the outside. So we tend to bias that, but really around 80% of the information firing up to the brain is coming from within us.
Yeah.
Interoception.
Gosh, we're so self-centered as humans, aren't we?
Yeah, but a lot of people will often, if they're not, do you know when you get people who can't connect to their body, right? You probably get this in your work as well, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
And so they might connect, perceive, because if their interoception is filled with all these sort of threats, then it's actually a threat to tune into your body, because it's actually unsafe. It's perceived as being unsafe. And so anecdotally, we'll find that there are more symptoms with a person like that. So there'll be more physical symptoms popping up, which is really the body's way of saying, hey, you're not listening. I have to keep ramping this signal up higher and higher and higher.
Yeah.
It's the only way you're paying attention is if I do that. But you know what? Like, if you just tune in a bit more, I wouldn't have to ramp up these pain signals so much.
Totally. That's like one of the reasons I decided to study kinesiology, because I felt like, and with my skin, like I think when I met you, like I had a lot of skin issues.
Yeah.
We know this. And then when I kind of solved it on my face, but it redirected to my back and it was all over the top of my back and it was so painful, I was like, oh my God, my body is literally screaming at me. You're not listening to me. You need to do something different.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided to water fast.
Yeah.
And
but that changed it, right?
Yeah, it definitely made a big difference. Yeah.
So when you give the body what it wants, it'll change. It'll tell you pretty quick, fast, and in a hurry.
If it's right or wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. I think I find a lot of people sometimes find it easier to do like the wrong thing and know that they want to go away from that, rather than trusting their intuition to take them towards the right thing.
Yeah.
Do you think that's because of the state of most people's nervous systems, that they can't actually trust like what's the right thing for them because everything's so jumbled?
Yeah, well, if we track that back to if everything's so jumbled because you're in that stress or threat response, then you're probably more limbic dominant, which means by default you have less blood in your frontal lobe. And so the frontal lobe is your executive decision-making area. So everything, you can't make those clear decisions because you're in that mode. So that's why it's really important for us to unload the stressors, not get too worried about exact. Sometimes you need to be specific, sometimes you don't. But we need to unload and get you out of that limbic state. So then you're going to have more trust in yourself, because really at the end of the day, the person you should trust the most is yourself. Totally. Right? And then when you do that, you'll be actually be able to attract and discern with others who to trust more, because you've got more of a connection to yourself. And you should be able to sort of resonate and feel into who's the best person to sort of assist you or help you.
Yeah, totally. It also brings to like the fore of my mind that like how like the system is designed to make you distrust, or even we were talking about even before we jumped on the call about like language and how we have some language that actually probably makes you, it creates too much like definitiveness in some areas that make it harder for you to trust like what's right for you because you get fixated on that language.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like for myself, yeah, you can have like threat producing language, which we will call like nociceptive language or nocebo. It'll create a nocebo effect.
Yeah.
And then you have the placebo generating language, which will create a placebo effect, and a lot of healing comes from those two effects.
Yeah.
Placebo or nocebo, right? And we want that. I mean, I'm totally fine with that. So even the words I use as a therapist can have an impact on someone as well. Like saying, you've got a disease or a diagnosis or a dysfunction, or we could do better or strong or weak or things like that. That's like, depending on the individual, those words are going to mean different things based off our conditioning from our background.
Yeah.
But they are very namey as well as a certain state. And then it also, what we do find is if we are stuck in that sort of state of stress, we tend to attach to those labels more. And we can't sometimes realize that those labels can change, or our state can change very, very quickly. So, because if we identify with that label or diagnosis, the change, like I see sometimes with people where they've changed already, but they pull themselves back because they're identifying with their diagnosis or their label. So they actually regenerate by the use of nocebo thinking. They regenerate those pathways to fire up again. That's why it can sometimes, one of the most important things to do for your health is monitor, not control, but observe how you're thinking and what you're saying to yourself. Because if you don't have a robust internal model of yourself, then you'll always give that power away to other people and not think you're powerful enough to heal yourself. You know what I mean? So building that robust internal model by using either neutral or placebo generating language, positive language to yourself is going to be one of the biggest things to implement.
And what are examples of neutral or placebo generating language? Because I feel like people will be like, what even?
Yeah, well, so neutral is if someone is hurt and they've injured themselves, we can say they're injured. That's a neutral, because that's what they've done, right?
Yeah.
But if they're broken, it's a fact. It's actually what happened. But to say like they're dysfunctional or they're broken or something like that is, I'm broken. I can't be fixed. Well, first of all, do you need to be fixed in the first place? Are you going to fix me? I need to find someone to fix me. I'm broken. I'm never going to get better. These are nocebo words. And then, so one of the ones that it's just a saying. This is a sentence basically that I will get people who are in pain or suffering, particularly pain, because there's usually a threat around how they move and things like that. And I just get them to say and drop in and reprogram their mind with saying things such as like, my body is strong, robust, and capable. Or I am strong, robust, and capable.
Yeah.
That's a very placebo generating word. And it's not neutral, but it's like it's quite strong in a positive way. And I've had people who had, gone to do a movement in a certain area of their body, and they had like quite strong pain, like say 8 out of 10.
Yeah.
And the only thing we changed, this is with online clients in different countries, the only thing we changed was getting them to say that in their mind. We got them to do the same movement again, and they had zero pain. And that was the only thing they changed. Because remember, it's all about threat. And so if we can reduce threat with just those words in the body. So just overlaying those words, and then you're you're doing that consciously, and your conscious mind does direct the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is the body. So when we say I'm strong, robust, and capable, then the tissues, all the muscles, joints, ligaments, and everything will act on those words. If you say like, I'm going to fall, well, all those muscles that activate to stop you from falling are going to fire up a lot, and that might cause pain.
Yeah.
So, but this is all happening on a moment-to-moment basis, depending on the environment, the words you're saying, how you're thinking about yourself, and everything else, and your levels of threat. And it can change very, very quickly. Right?
Do you feel like people need to have a level of self-belief to be able to say that statement and for it to work? Or do you feel that, or do you witness that because it's so neutral and at the end of the day, everyone is capable, strong, and robust in some way, it creates the ability for that to be fulfilled?
If there's a lack of belief in that statement, then I want to explore that deeper. Right?
Totally.
Why is there a lack of belief in that statement? Where did that come from? Where was that conditioning? And then we might need to do some work around that specifically, clear that out of the way, and then drop in that statement. There'll usually be a whole bunch of limiting beliefs around why that is even not in their vernacular, and why they might not believe it. So we can explore that, but also I have seen it will change it. Sometimes I like to show them that it can literally change straight away by just saying the words. But that's why I'll do a movement without it, and then a movement with it. And it's like, boom, light bulb. Yes, it can happen that fast.
Yeah.
Right?
See the tangible proof.
Yeah. Then there's the buy-in, and then they can. That's that'll last forever. That light bulb moment, and you can apply that to anything. I also have processes where I'll drop it into the limbic system. So we'll get the limbic system to agree with that statement. So kind of a little bit like Psych K stuff as well. Do different, we'll get the left and the right brain involved, move the eyes around, and then and drop it in, because then once that limbic system, that deep threat perceiving part of the brain believes that statement, it's all good. And you will get quick changes, but if that thought pattern becomes subconsciously driven in to that part of the brain, to the subconscious part of the brain, then it's just a matter of time before that is then perceived consciously, which might be days, weeks, months.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's
totally.
Our life is a printout, as who says that? Dr. Bruce Lipton.
Yeah. Love Bruce Lipton. Yeah.
Yeah. Our life is a printout of our subconscious thought patterns, basically.
Yeah, so true. I love, and there's a real reminder there of like what you said earlier, how important it is to be some level of an observer of your thoughts and experiences, so that then you can not be the victim of those thoughts and experiences. Because
yes. Yeah, what did you want to say about that?
Oh, being in victim mode, like I think that's like the thing I've witnessed the most. I witnessed it in myself, so maybe that's why
sure
I see it so much. But just in day-to-day life, you can see all those moments where, or it's just like not wanting to take responsibility, and so therefore it's easier to feel like, how could someone's going to rescue me if I'm somehow a victim.
Yeah, there's got to be it's so easy for all of us to get stuck in that victim mode. And there's so many layers as to why we would go there.
Yeah.
Even if you call yourself conscious and you've done work and stuff, we go in and out of these things all the time. But yeah, it's definitely tied in with that neurological aspect of being in threat. Once you're sort of out of that, or you're more deep, your default setting is to be more in that sort of ventral vagal state, then it's much harder for you to be in a state of victim mode. But a lot of people stay in this suffering of victim mode because they might have been in that for a long time, and that becomes habituated, and then to change a habit is actually a threat to that same system. It's why a lot of people struggle with addictions, with smoking and alcohol and gambling and things like that, because to change out of that patterning is actually considered a high level threat. Now, with people who are in pain and suffering, they may consciously say they want to change, but those parts of the brain are still holding on to that identity. And also there may be a whole bunch of different, like they get something out of that suffering. They might get the looked after that they didn't get from their parents when they were young. So then that wound and that attachment needs to be healed. Otherwise they're just going to keep reverting back. And I've seen people who have gone from having fibromyalgia and stuff like that to like literally zero symptoms, and literally bring it all back because they didn't know what to do with not being sick or not suffering, because then there's a different level of responsibility. First of all, to heal and you need self-responsibility, and then you can obviously have people to help you along the way. That's it's important to ask for that as well.
Yeah.
But then once you are to really truly heal, it's self-responsibility. But then once you are healed and you are generally well, then you now have to take responsibility for the world around you. So you move out of being a child to basically being more of an adult or a parent or a leader, right? So you then have to take responsibility for the world around you, and that's quite threatening. And we can see around the world there's a lot of people who are sort of diverting their own power and just wanting to be told what to do and all that sort of stuff, and that things are going to be taken away, or they don't have to do all the work themselves here, because it's not easy, and it's not meant to be easy. It's not meant to be easy, but it's a lot more rewarding for your soul and all that sort of stuff to take that responsibility and transcend being a victim, and also recognize where you continually still have those strands of being a victim. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. For me, like I realized when I was feeling, when I wasn't consciously realizing that I was in victim mode, like, because consciously I didn't feel like I was a victim, because I always, like, I had a higher trust in like what was happening to me, and like I could always see a lesson in things, until something happened that really shook my world on a deeper level, and I was like, oh my gosh, why is this happening to me? And as soon as I had that thought, I was like, this is not a usual thought I have, but this is like a deeper level thought. Like, this is something deep. There's something deeper here. And through months of exploring it, I realized it was because there was a victim there. For me to have that thought, even if it was just a split second thought, there was something deep within me that still felt like a victim. So I was always going to attract scenarios that would affirm that in different ways. And this was a scenario that it was right in my face. It wasn't a subtle one. And so I was like, oh, okay. And then it made me realize that the interaction with the other person, that I had actually, even though they're in their own circle and they're attracting their own experiences, my own experience was attracting that. So no matter what it was, whether it was that thing or something else, whatever the story is of what they did to me, there would always have been something that would come up with them, because I didn't fully believe I wasn't empowered of my life and the creatrix of my life,
Yeah, you're being tested.
Totally. And I still see it come through now. Like, it's a deep one. It's a deep wound. Like, there's little things that happen. You're like, oh, that's still there a little bit. Great.
I'm not sure if it ever fully ends, but that's okay. I think you just get to there's probably, you go through different seasons of diving deeper into things, and that depending on what's happening in your life at the time.
Yeah, and being able to just witness that that's what it is, and when it's a time that you need to set a boundary, and when it's a time that you attracted it and you need to take responsibility.
And also, when you set a boundary, are you okay? You're going to be okay with the ramifications of setting that boundary.
Yeah, I think I'm generally okay with that.
No, but it's because
not everyone is.
When we do, it can create a bit of an effect in the person, or
the response.
It's a response. So you just have to be that's what I think stops people sometimes from putting up these boundaries, and myself included. You know, I've had particularly myself lately, a lot more boundary stuff that's coming up, and a few people trying to push it too much. With, you know, and particularly, you know, sometimes you get that as a practitioner as well, where people kind of you give a lot and they take a lot, or they expect a lot. So you got to kind of work out a way to put in boundaries there.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's fine, but sometimes you get some things that happen and you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, totally.
But then there's always a lesson in that, like, okay, your reaction to that is going to tell you a lot about where you're at, and then you can explore that.
Yeah.
Not in a pedantic way, but just have a look at that.
Yeah. I think boundaries is I had a women's circle last night and we were talking about boundaries. I've been talking about boundaries for like the last 3 weeks, but especially it's one thing to set a boundary, and then it's another thing to be consistent with sticking to that boundary. Because I think often sometimes we set a boundary and we kind of get it off our chest and we feel better. So then we kind of allow maybe the behavior not to be changed because we're like, oh, at least we feel heard. But then actually it starts to slip away, and then you realize, actually my boundaries are still being crossed here, but I'm just allowing it.
Yeah. It's one of the, even like about a month or so ago, or a few months ago, I was like, you know, talking about increasing my prices, you know, based off, you know, my history, background, educate, all that sort of stuff, and comparing it to other people.
Yeah.
And I was like, you made a decision, I'm going to bump it up. And then like literally the next few days, and it didn't happen at all before that, people were asking for discounts or not, you know, they were just asking for things. I don't normally do that. I'm like, come on, like,
but like, are you sure?
Like, and then I just sort of had to really stand. They're all an opportunity for me to go, no, you know, this is what we're doing. It's interesting how that sort of happens.
Totally. The synchronicities that are challenging and the synchronicities that feel pleasurable are always interesting. And even the ones that catch you by surprise, like even, you know, coming back to like that first session I had with you a few weeks ago, which was taking my dad's session, and you said to me, I literally left a note to look at heart stuff with him in this next session, and he died of a heart attack like a week earlier. It's like those little synchronicities, those little threads of our intuition, I guess. And even him didn't usually bring it up, and he'd obviously mentioned it to you, and so like his intuition as well. But we don't trust ourselves enough to like act on that because we're still so stuck in that fight or flight.
Yeah, I mean he talked about that a lot. That last he mentioned it quite a lot. So that's why I wrote it down. I was like, we got to look at this, and it's just crazy how that happens.
Totally.
He's been very candid about it, so it was interesting.
Yeah. I was learning something in my yoga teacher training the other week, and it triggered me in the moment. I was like sitting there. I think I was telling you when I was down in Melbourne the other week that they were talking about breathing and how important exercising the diaphragm is to prevent heart attacks. And I'm just sitting there like, oh my God, because I know my dad would not have been breathing properly. I mean, he was a chronic smoker, and it makes you think a lot about how the breath is such a big link to this nervous system question. If we pose it, perhaps it's so important.
Yeah, it's a reflection of both a reflection of and a control mechanism of the nervous system.
Yeah.
So our subconscious breathing patterns are reflective of where our nervous system is at. Being that, you know, if we are breathing into the chest more, and we're breathing shallow, or we're inhaling more, so we're trying to take more breaths, that is always an indication that we're in a sympathetic response. Like you can't say, oh, I'm not stressed, and you're breathing like that. It's like, no, your body is showing that, like it's in your physiology. You're in a sympathetic state. You're breathing in, because breathing in will activate that fight flight mechanism, that sympathetic response. It just always does. It's just the way it's built in. And conversely, if you're breathing through your nose, it's quiet, and it's more exhale focused, then you're going to be activating more the vagus parasympathetic branch.
Yeah.
You tap into the vagus nerve just by making your exhale longer, and it doesn't have to be that much longer. It could just be like 2 seconds longer. So if you breathe in for 4 seconds and you breathe out for 6, that will stimulate a calming response, a parasympathetic response, and it will stimulate the vagus nerve. And it's physiologically impossible to do that type of breathing and not calm the nervous system down.
I love that. Yeah.
However, if breathing slow, breathing through your nose, all that sort of stuff, it can be perceived as a threat, because you'll get so, if you're someone that's always stressed, but might not even know you're stressed, generally the breathing is more short, sharp, short and sharp, fast, often, and into the rib cage. Then when we try to move in, do the opposite of that, the polar opposite of that, it is actually kind of perceived as a threat, which is normal.
It's different. Yeah.
Because it's different.
Yeah.
It's normal because the survival reflexes are habituated to the other type of breathing pattern. This is where a lot of people don't do breathing properly, because they go, I did it and I got anxious. And I'm like, okay, yeah. So there's going to be, with this, what we're going to have to actually do is facilitate safely, and in intervals. We kind of have to almost not force you through, but you are going to have to kind of, it's like moving through emotional stuff. You kind of have to feel it before you can transcend it.
Go through it, not around it.
Yeah, you can't resist it, because the resistance actually perpetuates the suffering. And that's probably one of the biggest things, is resisting our feelings. And then when you're trying to, breathe slowly, or you're getting those signals that are creating anxiety. Anxiety is a physical feeling. You're just resisting that feeling. If you actually are able to, over time, habituate yourself to that feeling then doesn't become anxiety generating. So then you now have agency and power over how you're perceiving or responding to those negative feelings, right? Or perceived negative feelings. But the breath is built into all existence, and it is literally the most powerful modulator there is. I'll do 20 to 30 minutes of that type of breathing per day. Alternate nostril breathing, 4 in, 6 out. I usually will now do 4 in, 8 out breathing, and I'll do that every day, and that just helps everything: mind, body, digestion, pain levels. If you're in chronic pain, any type of pain, breathing in for 4 or 6, or breathing in for 4 and out for 6, or breathing in for 4, out for 8, that will decrease your pain. It will decrease that fight-flight response. It may not happen always straight away, and if you're in a real sort of anxious state, probably not the best time to do it. You want to kind of do it where you are you're training it. You're trying to train yourself into the opposite direction. Yeah. So it becomes preventative rather than, like a Band-Aid. Yeah. Which is, where we're trying to move, which is where sort of holistic medicine, or integrated medicine, or alternative medicine, or whatever you want to call it, is more into that side of things, where we're preventative rather than trying to, put a Band-Aid on things. Yeah. Proactive rather than reactive. Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And so a lot of this stuff we've been touching on, or speaking about the vagus nerve, and I just want to clarify. So by stimulating the vagus nerve, we create an equilibrium in the nervous system. Is that correct? Yeah. Yes. So by stimulating, okay. So let me just. What's an equilibrium, right? It's we don't want to be too parasympathetic either. So we don't want to be too, yes. It can be used to create equilibrium. But if you were to, the vagus nerve itself actually is the the modulator, right, of the nervous system. So by doing things that activate the vagus nerve healthily, that nerve in and of itself is the equilibrator. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it calms the nervous system.
It turns the dials up or down.
Yeah, balances.
Turns the dials up or down. So it does balance it. Yeah, balancing. So, but for like people who are in chronic fatigue, for instance, they probably have too much of this sort of down or off switch. They're too parasympathetic dominant. Yeah. They do need to get more movement happening, but it needs to be done in a way that's not threatening. So you can't really go wrong by sort of that 4 in, 6 out. Mm-hmm. That generally will work to balance out most things in the body.
Yeah.
Including chemistry, body chemistry, so acid alkaline levels, mm-hmm. So inflammation, pain, and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, definitely it's tied into that vagal response. The vagus is the modulator. The vagus nerve its primary job is to observe what's happening inside our bodies, mm-hmm. inform the brain of what's happening, and then the brain then sends out a response from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
It's pretty cool. Pretty cool piece of kit.
Yeah, piece of kit. Can you soup it up?
Huh?
Can you get a extension? I don't know any car terms, but like it makes me think of.
Well, I do vagus nerve stimulation, which is using like a TENS machine. And
on the ears. Yeah.
Yeah, but look, to be honest, breathing is as effective. You can also do cold water immersion. Does that? So when you go in ice bath or have a cold shower, when you get that kind of that response.
Yeah,
that's actually coming from the vagus nerve. It's called the
splash on the face with the cold water. Yeah.
And when you learn to overcome that reflex, then you can get more vagal responses.
Cool.
Which is going to help everything. So, yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, which is why everyone's so obsessed with the cold water plunges at the moment.
It is. Yeah. It's an amazing. I mean, that's a classic application of stress, of hormetic stress, like the same with the saunas. Ideally would be, doing cold plunge or cold showers and saunas. That's a really good combo because you're going to both extremes. And that's actually habituating your system to be able to deal with stressors, which overall is going to have a net positive effect on your nervous system's ability to modulate itself.
Yeah. So doing the activities that create a stress response in your body, but it's like a positive stress and make everything else that you perceive as stress less dominant when you experience it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same with exercise. Exercise is a hormetic stress.
Yeah.
And it's something that you do over time to condition yourself to that type of stress. So I know for sure if I don't exercise much, I'm much less robust in my ability to deal with stress and threat and all that sort of stuff. And I just can't do that. Being a therapist, I have to be in a state that's less stressed than the people that walk into my clinic, because otherwise I can't help them.
Totally. Yeah. So you've got go ahead.
Because energy always moves to the lowest potential. So, if I'm more stressed than them, they're going to heal me when I'm working on them. So unconsciously, even though they're paying me. So, they'll walk out and go, that was a crap session, So you got to be I have to be, which is great. I mean, I've picked a profession that is almost says you have to do this or you can't do your job. So, and that's probably why I like doing it as well. But there's a lot of professions and a lot of, that could benefit from that, any type of performance, work, business, whatever it is, finding ways to unload stress and train your biology to support your psychology, to be able to operate better is something that we all sort of need to do if we're a human being on the earth right now. Totally. I love it. Animals do it. Yeah. They just sleep, they're tired, they go and sleep, Yeah, exactly. The dog, they've got a sore back, they put their back into the, where the sun is. We've got the sunlight, earthing, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's so important. It's like, how can we support our physiology in everything that we do?
Yep. Yeah.
Mm. I've got some questions for you, Nick.
Cool.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Do you know what your sun, moon, and rising signs are?
Brooke was saying this the other day.
What's your sun sign? When's your birthday?
13th of July.
So you're
That's sun signs. Yeah, I'm Cancer.
Cancer.
And I've got another Cancer there, and then I've got something.
I feel like you've got something fire.
I can't remember. I have to ask her.
That's okay. Do you know what your human design is?
Generator.
Generator. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. What's your favorite fruit?
Mango.
Yum. So good. I could eat mangoes like every day in mango season, but I'm also happy for a break from them when it stops. So then I'm excited for them when they come back around. If you could return to one moment in your life and re-experience it again, what moment would you return to?
Apart from like birth of my child, that'll be one of them. And then, even some of the times going to the Middle East and in the army, like just going to that part of the world was pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, we didn't talk much about your history, but you have a very colorful history that led you to what you're doing now, definitely.
Yeah. Just some I had some of those experiences so young, and I was just like, how did I get there? Like, it was bizarre.
Yeah. Forest or the ocean?
Ocean, but you could have both.
Yeah, you're a Cancerian. Like you're probably going to choose the ocean just that little bit over. What plant or flower do you work with the most, if any? Like any herb or?
Oh, like essential oil. I use like geranium. Like,
Yeah, nice. Geranium.
yeah,
Beautiful. Heart medicine, hey?
yeah.
What's your favorite crystal?
Quartz.
Clear quartz?
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you're an animal, what animal would you be?
My daughter said I'd be a lion.
Yeah, that's why I feel like you have Leo in your chart.
I think I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have to ask Brooke. Yeah, a lion, I think. Yeah.
You're looking very liney with this beard at the moment.
Yeah, I know.
People can't see, but I'm sure they'll find you online and be able to witness you. Is there anything that you want to leave the listeners with, thoughts or summation wise, before we should tell them how to find you?
Yeah, okay. I suppose it would just be okay. So if you're suffering with something, it's like there's a lot of stuff that we think that can help, and there's a lot of buzz around the nervous system and the vagus nerve and things like that. But at the end of the day, it's not that complex. We just need to be able to manage how much input is coming in against how much is going out, and we need to be able to unload stuff that's coming in, and then that will create more space for us to have more output. We can't always be just putting out all the time. It's like even going for a workout. When you go for a workout, what are you doing to work in?
Yeah.
So when I go workout, I love that. Well, I'll actually do it maybe in between sets. And at the end of the workout, I'll do qigong.
Yeah.
So I don't get tired at all from that workout. So if you can apply that philosophy over the whole life and it has to be done on a kind of day-to-day thing, because if we don't do these things day to day, then it does accumulate, in a year, 2 years, 3, 5, into what can sometimes be seen as an insurmountable problem.
Yeah.
But it's just doing those simple things every day, whether it's going to the beach, putting your feet in the sand, getting some sunsets, journaling, whatever it is, you need to have, and then getting an adequate amount of sleep. We need to spend more time prioritizing yin, or kind of sustainable. Like, we need to keep ourselves sustainable by unloading all the stuff we accumulate and then building up our resources just to be able to deal with the happenings of day to day before it gets on top of us. And it's often really simple things.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I love that, and it's often a deep reconnection with with nature around us as well, in many ways, isn't it?
100%. Just go into nature, and then you start to attune to that Schumann resonance, and then that in and of itself is just gonna set you in the right position.
Love it. If people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to find you?
So the thing I'm most active on is Instagram.
Yeah.
So my business on that is called Functional Neurohealth, and that's just, you can find that, put that into the search box, you'll find that there. I've got a website and stuff like that. I've got a YouTube as well. I'm pretty active on that, and if you want to reach out, just first probably contact me through that means, and then we can go from there. Otherwise, there's what I post up there is pretty much just insights that I have gleaned over the years of working with people, and stuff that I continue to sort of say to people. So I thought, why not just put that up there? And it seems to help a lot of people all over the world. So it might point your mind in the direction of sort of more of the things that I was talking about today, a little bit more of the science behind things.
Love it. I'll put everything in the notes for everyone as well. And you offer one-on-one sessions with people, as well as like you have a database, I guess, of information to access.
Yeah, I do. I've got short courses as well. I've got courses on breathing and things, the vagus nerve as well.
Yeah.
I've got practitioner courses and certifications coming up. I can do one-on-one work and consulting work as well.
Very cool. Amazing. And if you're in Melbourne based, or otherwise you're online as well.
Yeah. I work with people all over the world. I mean, you can do either.
Yeah.
I love the hands-on stuff, but also I don't mind the online work as well.
Yeah, it's good to have a balance.
Yeah.
Totally.
Right. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the conversation. It's been great.
Yeah, awesome.